Have you ever done the right thing and you're praying that the right thing will happen, but then the wrong things happen, even though you do the right thing? So you did the right thing and then the wrong things happened. But you prayed before, you got yourself prepared, and you thought, if I do this right thing, why could it ever be possible that something bad would happen to me when I'm doing right? I don't know if you have ever felt this, but if you have, you're a human being. I think a single one of us has thought this. I woke up the other day, I think it was about 4:00 in the morning, because I woke up to Ziggy, our little puppy that we got on vacation. Don't do that ever. But he's jumping on me and licking my face and doing all this stuff. And he seems so cute, which is, so great, I guess. And I get up and I'm like, what, I could act like I'm asleep and just let my wife take him out. And then I thought, nah, I should do the right thing. Do the right thing, because if you do the right things happen. That's what I've heard my dad say before. I've even said it before. And but there have been times in my life where I did the right thing and then the wrong thing happened, and then I questioned God, and then we have this, I argue with him a little bit, and then he shows me some new things and I learn. But this time I was like, well, I'll do the right thing. I'll get up, I'll take Ziggy out, I'll do the stuff, and I take him out and he potties and does all the stuff. And I'm thinking, man, I am a good husband. That's what I was thinking. I'm a good guy. I mean, it's 4:00 in the morning. I'm about to leave to, an engagement that I'm going to, but you know what? I got to do this. I got to do it right for my wife, all this stuff. And then I, let him back in the room. I walk up, and as I'm going into the laundry room, because I need to change the laundry out, bam, I feel some like almost cold Play-Doh as I step down. And I'm like, man, there's no way that my kids at 13 and 15 play with Play-Doh. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. My dog had doo-dooed right in the door as I walk in. And I stepped, and then I kind of peeled back, and I was like, oh man, maybe I just stepped and it squished, and I didn't, but it squished and it stuck to my foot. Now at 4:00 in the morning, I'm like, oh my God, I want to wring this dog's neck. And I remember saying to God, you better have a very good lesson through Proverbs 22. This was on the 22nd of the month. And I said, you better have a good, and this is how I was talking to God, you better have a great storyline or something to be able to teach me about this, because I just stepped barefoot in some dookie. But I tell you, in Proverbs 22, it prepares us for the dog poop that we will inevitably squish with our bare foot while the culprit looks us dead in the eye. And so I'm excited to be able to share this. I was so frustrated at the time, but I tell you, God delivered like he always does in Proverbs 22. So why don't we get this party started?
Nothing more on my mind. I got to shine, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
I don't think that there's anything more frustrating than getting up and being in the dark and stepping barefoot in some dog doo-doo. If you haven't had that experience, go ahead and do it. And what I would suggest is do it while your dog, and this is how Ziggy works, he looks me dead in my eye while while the stuff is happening. So I turn on the light, and literally, like, I was looking at the dog, and looking at my foot, and it had some, barefoot, and that dookie, that's not the way to wake up. And so for me, I was thinking, God, you better bring something. You better bring some good stuff, some food for my soul through Proverbs 22. But he delivered, but I was still like, I still wanted to shake the dog. You know what I mean? So, Proverbs 22 was incredible. Welcome to another episode of Inchstones too. If you're just tuning in for the first time, we go through the corresponding proverb, corresponding day. We're working on Proverbs 22 today. If you're on YouTube, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you share it and comment and subscribe and do all the things that you know you need to do. But in Proverbs 22, verse 1, your name is the most valuable thing that you will ever own. And so as I was thinking at that time, I was like, how could why is my name so valuable? I just, had something that didn't turn out right. I did the right thing getting up in the morning, but then the wrong thing happened. Like, how is this? And what God was saying is your name is the most important thing that you'll ever own and most valuable thing that you'll ever own. So no matter what, always do the right thing, even when the wrong thing comes from it. And I was like, man, I'm not feeling you right now. You need to make sure. But what God was saying is my relationship with you is unconditional. It's not circumstantial. So it's not you do this and you get this, because then that would be a religion. I want to have a relationship. Do this because it's the right thing to do, even when this thing happens, because I want you to work on faith, that the fact that I'm working on your behalf, even though you can't see it in the circumstances right now. It's massive. So in verse 2, your value is already established. Walk in it. And this is a big one, because I think for me, for so long, I attached myself to accomplishment. I still do. I still fail at this. I have challenges. But when we attach our value to the things that we do, it's crazy, because if we aren't able to accomplish that thing, then we think our value drops. And what I want to encourage every single one of you is your value is already established because he made you. So walk in it. That's what he was saying. Just walk in it as much as possible. For those of you watching on YouTube too, you could see right behind me, there's a Oilers pillow, and that was given to me by my neighbor. I was walking on my dog walk this morning, and he stopped and he asked me, how's the vibe? How's the vibe today? And I said, oh, it's amazing. And he said, I got something for you. He ran in the house, and little did I know he listened to the podcast, I believe. I don't know how many episodes, but he told me, he said, you know what? I have this Oilers pillow, and my mom made it years ago. We were from Houston. I don't use it anymore, and I'd like you to have it. You can put it up in your podcast room. So there it is for all of you to see, that the greatest team of all time is the Houston Oilers. So there you have it. Your value is already established. Walk in it. See, I had to walk in that, being an Oilers fan, knowing that my value was in that all the time. But God wants you to know that it's not about your accomplishments. When you separate yourself from your accomplishments, when you realize that you shouldn't compare yourself to anybody, and that you could do anything that you put your mind to, just because you could do it, though, doesn't make it right for you and doesn't make it your purpose. He wants you to see that value. In verse 3, prudence will slow things down and make them clear. Imagine if you could slow things down in your life right now and make them very clear. Well, prudence will do that, and prudence is just the thought of the future. If we think of the future, but we act in the present, think of the future, act in the present. Respect the past, think of the future, walk in the present, right? This will get us to walk free and light. That's where God wants us to be able to be. In verse 4, humility is not the lack of strength. It's the source of exponential power. Humility is not a lack of strength. It's the source of exponential power. As I was walking out of Disneyland the other day with my brother, he said one of the most challenging things in the world. He said, what I'm focused on right now is just staying humble. And I was like, oh, wow, that's so philosophical. He's like, Kel, when I go golfing and I hit the shot and I know it's the shot, he said, I stay humble because I know the next shot ain't going to be that shot. He says the most humbling thing in the world, and I'm trying to apply that in my life. And so I thank you for your wisdom, Rob. You're such an inspiration to me, and you're incredible. Number 5, poop is going to happen. Prepare, practice, and that way you can execute resilience. And resilience is just the ability to be able to snap back into your natural state. And God wants us to be resilient. He wants us to be resilient. Not that bad things aren't going to happen, like stepping in poop with your bare foot. He's saying it's coming. You know it's coming. The circumstances are going to come. The challenges in your finances are going to come. The challenges in your relationship. But he wants you to be so filled up with his love, his grace, his peace, his wisdom, that when it does happen, you're able to snap back into it. Doesn't mean we don't react because you're human, but in verse 5, it just gives us that. In verse 6, whatever starts out right ends up right. My mom would always say this over and over and over again. Do the right thing always. Are we always going to do that? Well, I hope so. But my mom hoped for it, but we didn't do the right thing all the time. We didn't listen to her a lot, but I tell you, she was a very, very wise woman. I love you, Mama. Thank you so much for all your wisdom. In verse 7, 26, and 27, debt will pervert your character. I tell you, I've experienced debt in friendships, in relationships. I've experienced debt financially, and every single time it perverts my character because I start to think, well, how can I get out of this debt? What's the quickest way to be able to get out of the debt? The greatest advice that I ever heard as far as debt-wise was from Julie Compton. She just said, take all your the debt that you have, all the credit cards and credit lines and all those things. Pick out the smallest one. And then add all your money to that thing and pay the minimums on everything else until you get that one paid off. Once you get that one paid off, then it'll gain confidence, then move on to the next one, move on to the next one, move on to the next one, and then get yourself out of debt because then you could be free to go to the places that you want to go. Pretty simple. Verse 8, success is in the seed. And this is what my pop said, boy, how many seeds are in an apple? And he said, boy, how many apples are in a seed? He would do this to me all the time. He'd take an apple and he'd be like, son, how many seeds are in the apple? I'd be like 8 or 10, Pop. And then he would take one of the seeds and he would say, how many apples in the seed? And I would say, I don't know. He said, an exponential amount. He said, so why don't you invest in the seeds as opposed to the apple? I love you, Pop. I miss you. I miss you giving me Pop's wisdom all the time. In verse 9 and 16 of Proverbs 22, generosity is a blue chip stock. When you're generous with other people, it has an incredible upside. There's very little downside. Now, it won't be like I am generous here, so I get this back in return. That obviously didn't happen because I was really nice to my wife, and then I stepped in dog poop with a bare foot. God is saying, though, over time, generosity will outperform anything. In verse 10, what is the root? Find out what the root of the challenge that you're dealing with. Find out the root of the success that you're having. Find out the root of whatever it is. And I mean, once you figure out what the root is and the foundation, and what God is saying is the foundation is just wisdom. Wisdom is that foundation that he wants you to build your entire life on. What is that? It's the right use of knowledge. And the right use of knowledge comes from the fear of God, which is the respect to him. It just means that we spend time with him. And that's what he wants us to spend or invest in for our foundation. In verse number 11, most things can be solved by checking the condition of your heart. This was a tough one because there's a lot of times where I'm like, oh no, I'm mad because of X. And he's like, check the condition of your heart. Where's your heart at? Where's your heart at in this situation? When your heart is in line, when you align your heart and your mind and your actions, when you do that, things will start to move towards the way that they need to go. But most of the time, things can be solved by checking the condition of your heart. Why did you do it? What was the real reason? Not what you intended to do, but what was the real reason? What did you believe in that situation? In verse 12, is God's promises are true. That's a pretty easy statement. In verse 13 and 15, laziness is the Michael Jordan of excuses. Laziness is the Michael Jordan of excuses. In verse 14, distractions filtered are just silly lies. But what are you filtering them with? Distraction, when you filter it with wisdom, it's just a silly lie. When you look at it, it's like, that's not even true. But if we don't have the wisdom to be able to filter it with, that's where we get into challenges. That's why it said in a couple of verses before that most of the time things can be solved by looking at the condition of our heart. Fill your heart with wisdom. That wisdom is the right use of knowledge. It comes from the fear of God or the respect to him, and just means you spend time with him. That's what he wants you to build your life on. In verse 17 through 19, listen to wisdom, store it up, speak it, so that you will trust in the Lord. Let me say it again. Listen to wisdom, store it up, speak it so that you will trust in the Lord. You see, when you listen to wisdom, then you store it up and you speak it. What'll start to happen is you'll start to move towards it. When you move towards it, then you'll experience it. Once you experience it, then you'll realize why you should be trusting him in the first place. And I tell you, like when you base it against wisdom, wisdom is undefeated. In verse 20 through 23, be honest, speak truth, and do right work. Self-explanatory. Verse 24 and 25, the company you keep is imperative. I learned that from my buddy Will and from his mom. She was always huge on this. Be careful of the company that you keep and the friends that you have around you. I have the greatest friends in the world. I've had them since 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th grade. And I tell you, they're irreplaceable and unbelievable human beings. In verse 28, study wisdom and build and bind it on your heart. Study wisdom and bind it on your heart. How do we bind something? Like we wrap it around. We want to make sure that it's there. In verse 28, it tells us that. In verse 29, as we finish up, is master your craft and God will honor it. Whatever your craft is, right? Whatever your craft is, no matter what it is that you do. Say with myself, I was very fortunate early on to have an incredible career in the professional beauty industry. For 30 years, over 30 years. It was amazing. God honored that because I mastered my craft. Now in the keynote speaking world, in the podcasting world, have I mastered it? No, I'm working at it, and I want to work at it as much as possible. I want to honor it, and God will honor those things that we master. But dedicate ourselves to it. See, Proverbs for me never disappoints. There is a multitude of instructions needed for the barefoot poop that you're going to step in throughout your life. The good thing is that we serve a God that already knows what we need before it ever squishes between our toes. Ziggy, I love you, but sometimes I want to shake you. See, God already knows about the poop that's going to happen. He already knows about that. He knows when you're going to step in it with your bare foot like I did. But he's also preparing you right now. And he wants you to store up so much wisdom that way when you hit it, it doesn't mean you don't react, because I did and I lost everything inside of me. But that we're able to have resilience, which means that we'll snap back into natural state. And that natural state is exactly who he planned you to be and gifted you to be. So you can go out there and tell the message of the poop that you step in and encourage somebody, because somebody's about to step in poop, but they don't have the wisdom yet. And they haven't grounded themselves in that. And that's going to literally, their life could fly apart because of a small thing that happened and an overreaction to it. So I want to encourage you to share your story as much as possible. Dive into the word. Dive into the word as much as possible. Proverbs 22, honestly, it never disappoints. How could you, God, take dog poop on my bare foot and turn it into a message? Well, you just did. And I want to thank you so much. I want to thank you all for subscribing, commenting, sharing it with your friends. My name is Kelly Cardenas, and I'm officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and soul.
Nothing more on my mind. I got to shine, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain. We